Well, a very good afternoon to you and a warm welcome to SA Today. Now, on this day 25 years ago, former Presidents Nelson Mandela and former President F.W. de Klerk held a debate before South Africa's first democratic elections. Today, we bring you back that debate and we asked journalist Freek Robinson, who was facilitating that discussion, Professor Susan Boyson, who is the Director of Research at Mapungubwe Institute, and political analyst Dr. Somadoda Figeni to unpack the conversation, share their thoughts on how far the country has come since the 14th of April 1994. Now remember, you can also be part of the discussion using the hashtag SABC1994 debate. The question we're asking you today is, how far has South African democracy evolved since 1994? Hashtag SABC1994 debate. So let's take a look at that discussion now.
In less than 2 weeks, the South African nation will go to the polls. For the first time ever, really together as a nation. As the state president, it has been my privilege to lead the process which brought us to this historic moment. In that, I have been assisted by leaders from many other parties, also Mr. Mandela here, and I pay tribute also to them. I promised when I took office to guide South Africa to a new era. I promised to end apartheid. I promised to release Mr. Nelson Mandela. I promised a new constitution through negotiation. I promised a free and fair election in which all South Africans can participate with an equal vote. I promised justice to all. I've kept that promise. And this has brought us to a new beginning. The years of apartheid are over. A new beginning awaits a new South Africa. Your vote will decide whether that new beginning is a good one or a bad one. It will be a good new beginning if the result of the election achieves a balance of power between the two main contenders, the National Party and the ANC. If any one party gets too much power, it will be a bad beginning. Bad also for all South Africans. Our people who are going to vote have the choice to make it a good beginning or a bad one. The electorate in South Africa are deeply concerned about a number of issues. Time only allows me briefly to deal with two. I hope that during question time we can come back to it. Our people are concerned about their jobs, about their prosperity. They are concerned, deeply concerned, about the social services and the lack of it. And they are concerned about violence. If you vote for the new National Party, you will enable me to continue with my task to bring conciliation, reconciliation, and thus peace and prosperity to our country and all its people. I look forward to cooperate.
Thank you, Mr. de Klerk.
With all those.
Mr. Mandela, you now have the opportunity of 3 minutes for an opening statement.
My fellow South Africans, it is an honor for me to appear here tonight on the eve of a historic election when many South Africans will reclaim their hopes for a better life. I am humbled to represent the work and struggle of so many people who made the democracy a reality in our country. It is their good work that inspired me every day during those 27 years of my prison life. It is that good work that inspires me tonight. I will resist the temptation to deal with issues which are unimportant. There is much at stake in this election, and I must use this opportunity to state very clearly the very differences between ourselves on our approach to the major national issues facing this country. Those of you who are watching this discussion at your homes, look to us to exercise effective leadership worthy of the contribution and the sacrifices that you have made just to bring about a little improvement in your own families, in the difficult situation in which we live. The African National Congress has put forward a thorough and realizable program of action.
Thank you, Mr. Mandela. We must leave it there. Now, thank you. Now questions from our panel. The two parties have agreed on a format in which the answers and questions will be bound strictly by time. A candidate has 2 minutes to answer a question from the panel. His opponent will have 2 minutes to respond. Each will then get 1 minute to make further statements. We start with Tim Modise putting the first question to Mr. de Klerk. Tim.
Well, thank you, Frick. Question to Mr. de Klerk. Mr. de Klerk, violence, both political and criminal, poses a #1 threat to the elections, and over the past few years it has continued unabated, and seemingly the government is unable to deal with it. With that kind of record, as still incumbent president, what guarantees do you give the electorate tonight that violence will not get completely out of hand and thus subvert the forthcoming elections?
Thank you for the question, Tim. Let me start out by saying I disagree with the analysis that the government is not dealing effectively with it. Yes, there is too much violence, but the government has taken extensive steps to deal with it. In KwaZulu-Natal, there is a state of emergency. In the other trouble spot in South Africa, the PWV area, but specifically Johannesburg and surrounds, 11 districts have been declared as unrest areas. We've increased the police force by almost from 75,000 to around about 100,000. The government is taking whatever steps is possible, but its task has been made very difficult by inter alia, our main opponent, the ANC, by their demonizing of the police force, by driving a wedge between communities and the police force. Our task has been made extremely difficult by the continued existence and activities of the self-defense units and of activities also of supporters of the ANC. I sit here with 8 extracts from Goldstone reports showing that the violence in all 8 instances, and they were serious instances, in all 8 instances was attributed to ANC supporters and Inkatha supporters at each other's throats. That is not an easy problem to solve. The government has done its duty in that regard. If we look at the future, I believe that the election will lay a basis for real reconciliation in South Africa. The electoral strife will be over. it will be clear who are the winners, who are the strong parties, and in a government of national unity, our approach will be to take hands with all those who serve with us and jointly to continue to deal with the problem of violence.
Thank you, Mr. de Klerk. Mr. Mandela, your response in 2 minutes.
I deal with this question on the basis that is the duty of the leadership to put before the public a total picture. Any leader who is merely promoting the point of view of his political party is not a leader who is going to help to pull out South Africa from this mess. And what I find unacceptable is the fact that the president should misquote the reports of Mr. Goldstone. Because if you look at his reports, the police are deeply involved in this violence. You have one of the top police officers who has been suspended from his duty precisely because there are serious allegations against him of gun running, of working with murderers to murder innocent people. I have discussed these issues with Mr. de Klerk on a one-on-one basis confidentially, provided him with evidence of the activities of his police. There is one thing he does not want to know. There is one thing that he covers very, very stubbornly, and that is the involvement of senior police officials in this violence. That is the truth. That is the total picture.
Mr. de Klerk, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A rebuttal from you, Mr. de Klerk.
Yes, the fact of the matter is that the Goldstone Commission was an initiative of the government. And I have constantly said, if there's any evidence of any involvement of any members of the security forces in the fomenting of violence, of them being partisan, of them being involved in violence and political acts, then it must be reported to the Goldstone Commission. And the Goldstone Commission, when it brought out its report, I immediately acted. Can the ANC say the same with regard to people who have been implicated by the Goldstone Commission? They are high on the ANC's candidates lists. We have taken and will continue to take firm action if there's any evidence. Lastly, the Goldstone report in this instance refers to a small group of people. It does not refer to the whole police force, and Judge Goldstone went out of his way to emphasize that it is not the police force as such which is involved.
Thank you, Mr. de Klerk. Mr. Mandela, a final reply from you in 1 minute.
Well, again, Mr. de Klerk is not putting accurately the report from Mr. Goldstone. Because that report, whilst it accepts that there are many policemen who are good, has actually laid grave charges against a senior police officer. And I don't accept the explanation which the state president has given. He has much to explain than he has done. He is less than candid in putting facts before the public.
I'm afraid there's no time left to have further explanation on that particular issue. I now invite Ferial Hafaji of SABC Radio to put her question to Mr. Mandela.
Good evening, Mr. Mandela. Everywhere you've gone on your election campaign trail, you've promised and people have demanded jobs, houses, and peace. But 7 million people don't have jobs, 3 million don't have homes, and almost 300 people have died in political and criminal violence in this month alone. Has yours been an election campaign trail of empty promises?
Not at all. We have got a plan to build a better life for all South Africans. And a better life means houses, jobs, free quality education, hospital services. We believe that these are realizable. The present budget of South Africa is 126 billion rand. Last year, the National Party government paid 10 billion rand for arms, guns, and tanks, and only 2 billion for housing. We are going to rearrange the budget so that we can be able to address the basic needs of the masses of the people. We believe that we have a very clear plan which has been discussed not only with members of the liberation movement, but with government departments, with business, with academics, state corporations, all of whom regard this plan as being reasonable and which they support. For that reason, we say that our plan is realizable.
Mr. de Klerk, thank you. Mr. de Klerk, your response in 2 minutes.
The National Party and the ANC have been promising very much the same things. We also promise houses, we also promise better education, better health facilities, and more jobs. The real test is, who has a plan which can achieve it? And I say that the National Party has a plan which can work, because we can only achieve that if we have dynamic economic growth. And we can only have dynamic economic growth if we get investments. And we'll only get investments and new factories being built and increased economic activity if we follow economic policies which are in step with our policy, because our policy is in step with the economic policies which have succeeded across this world. The ANC's policy is riddled with that which has failed. It is riddled still with clinging to nationalization. You won't get investments as long as that is the case. The ANC continues to talk about stronger government intervention and more centralist control. Those economic policies will not succeed in generating the wealth which we need. The ANC's plan is going to cost much more than they indicate. I have had an independent investigation done. In the first year, implementation of that plan will cost 70 billion rand. That 70 billion rand is just a little bit less than the total income from personal income tax of the state. It means that the taxpayers' income tax will be doubled if we have to raise the 70 billion, and that the tax on cigarettes, on beer, on petrol will also be doubled. It is not affordable, and therefore, and you can't save it from the defense budget. Mr. Mandela is bringing in 12,000 new MKs into the defense force. The defense budget is going to rise and not deplete. Therefore, we will have to generate wealth, and that is the only way.
The clock demands that I stop you there. Mr. Mandela, you can respond in 1 minute.
This is the reply of a man who is not used to addressing the basic needs of the majority of the population, whose government is committed to a small minority. He is alarmed that we have to devote so much resources to blacks whose concerns they don't care for.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you to give Mr. Mandela an opportunity? We've agreed there will be no interjections. Thank you, Mr. Mandela. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That is the reason why Mr. de Klerk has consulted some unspecified people to conduct a study. Again, I say Mr. de Klerk is less than candid in analyzing national issues. We have produced a plan. We have circulated it to everybody, including government officials. Where is their plan? Where is it?
Mr. de Klerk, you have 1 minute. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 1 minute.
Mr. Mandela, our plan is absolutely on the table, and it has been accepted by the National Housing Forum. It was basically impeded by the ANC and ANC-supported organizations. They didn't want the plan to be realized. We have a plan which will draw in those billions of rand from the private sector. We have a good housing plan on the table which will achieve all those results. I care for all South Africans, irrespective of their race or color. But let me say, Mr. Mandela, my comments were not the comments of a man who is less than candid. They were the comments of somebody with experience, of somebody who sat in the cabinet and worked through budget since 1978 and who knows how the economy of the state works. And there is, no, it wasn't apartheid. We abolished apartheid. We made the country free. We freed all the people in this country.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give an opportunity.
And I'm giving you the assurance. When you share responsibility in that government of national unity, you will realize that we have, over the past 4 years, already cut the budget to the bone.
Thank you, Mr. de Klerk. Lester Venter, our political correspondent, has the opportunity now to put a question to Mr. de Klerk.
Thank you, Frick. Mr. de Klerk, you said earlier that the election will determine which is the strongest party. Now, if that is not the National Party, then in 2 weeks' time you will be a former state president of South Africa. And in fact, that will be a direct consequence of the process that you yourself set in motion 4 years ago. But of the many consequences to be counted in that process, South Africa today is one of the most violent places in the world. You've accused your political adversaries of bringing into government an outdated ideology, namely communism itself. As you stand today with these prospects ahead of you, are you happy with the way things have turned out with that process that you set in motion? And are you content, in fact, to now take a subservient role if it turns out in that government?
Thank you, Lester. Let me start out by saying the National Party has become the most representative non-racial party in South Africa. We are growing by the day, and we are going to come up with a dramatic result. So don't be too sure in the assumptions that you make. But if the ANC turns out to be the party with the largest slice of the vote, we'll firstly be very near to them. Secondly, I will become executive deputy president, not at the behest of the ANC, but in terms of the Constitution, and I will be representing in that government of national unity proudly millions and millions of moderate South Africans. And I will be putting their case, and I will be looking after their interests, and I will be cooperating with the other parties, because that is what the government of national unity is about. That we should rise above our political differences and address the challenges which we face in this country, address the needs of all our people. It is in that spirit that I say, yes, I'm happy the way it has turned out. There was no other alternative for South Africa. We were on the road to total confrontation which would have annihilated everything which has been built up in this country. We have negotiated a good balanced constitution with checks and balances. The power of politicians are effectively limited. There won't be any form of suppression. The courts will be independent. We have a good Bill of Rights in that constitution. There will be power sharing. There will be devolution. There will be federalism. Yes, I'm happy with what we achieved, and I have confidence in the future.
Mr. Mandela, your reply.
It is a source of grave concern when those who claim to be experienced make vague and starry-eyed claims which have no basis whatsoever. I must say that the African National Congress is an organization with more than 80 years of building national unity in this country.
Thank you. Thank you.
There is no organization in this country as divisive as the so-called new National Party of my friend on my left. It is actually promoting racial hatred. I hope...
please, ladies and gentlemen, please.
I hope I'll be able to demonstrate now how they are trying to turn the colored community against the African people. through slogans which are totally without foundation, and where the Independent Elections Commission has condemned the National Party for promoting inflammatory and racist attitudes in the community. That is the so-called new National Party. That is the false claim of building unity, which my friend is making. I reject that totally.
Mr. de Klerk, you have 1 minute to reply.
I would like to start out by telling Mr. Mandela that the National Party support base amongst the so-called coloreds is a spontaneous, warm, and very strong support base. We have proven in our relationship within the party that reconciliation can work. I didn't have to intervene as leader to get a colored person appointed into an important position in the Western Cape, as Mr. Mandela had to do because his own supporters wouldn't elect one. We have a good relationship, and the coloreds are our people, my people, they're South Africans, they're wonderful people, and I totally reject the accusation that the National Party is racist. I don't have 150,000 rand fines against me in the National Party for intimidation, as the ANC now has.
Mr. de Klerk, time demands that we stop there. Mr. Mandela, a final rebuttal from yourself.
This document, the Winde van Verandering, is full of the most scandalous, outrageous, racist allegations, where they say the slogan of the African National Congress is "kill the colored, kill the bull." I challenge Mr. de Klerk to renounce that statement now, if he's less than candid. Last night when he knew you were coming to this debate.
And of course, we'll return with more on that debate. But just remember, we're asking you this question: just how far has South Africa's democracy evolved since 1994? Send us your comments using hashtag SABC1994debate. And remember, if you missed any part of the debate, you can watch it again on SABC News YouTube channel. Don't go away.
We're explorers. We always have been. Endlessly curious, always looking for answers, for new frontiers, for new stories. Because that is who we are. From script to screen, from yelling action to taking you on a journey. Radio producers, script writers, on-air presenters, news reporters, sports analysts. We spend late nights creating captivating storylines and earlier mornings keeping you informed, educated, and entertained. For us, it's not a job, it's a calling. We do this and more because you do your part. SABC TV licenses, made possible by you.
Well, welcome back. We are reflecting 25 years ago to this day, an historic debate between Nelson Mandela and former President F.W. de Klerk. Friek Robinson was facilitating that discussion. Let's take you back to that.
Mr. Mandela, I hope you'll forgive my being frank. Thinking very much of the kind of people who are watching this program in other countries than South Africa. Many of them are going to see the National Party as a party with a past that has not always been very good or very democratic, not always been non-violent in many ways, even within its own organization. They're going to see that you've made a number of very large election promises which have raised the expectations of people a great deal in this country. And they're going to wonder, frankly, whether South Africa, under your presidency, won't be heading down the same road that many other countries in Black Africa have. Will you, for instance, borrow money on the scale that so many other countries have? Zimbabwe, for instance. How will you deal with this problem?
Mr. Mandela?
South Africa is not a poor country. As I have said, our budget this year is 126 billion rand. We also are going to reorganize the budget, restructure the budget in order to avoid the wastage of a party. We will be able to use the country's resources in a more efficient manner and to prevent the corruption which is so endemic in the National Party government.
Please, ladies and gentlemen.
The gravy trains where most of the funds of the country have gone have come to an end. We have committed ourselves to leaders trying to lead a style of life similar to those of the community. I am going to suggest that my own salary, if I'm elected as state president, must be cut. I am doing that, unlike the National Party government, which has attempted to pay large sums to the Director Generals when the poor people, when there are 5 million people unemployed, when there are 7 million people without housing. We are not going to live like fat cats. My friends in the National Party can do that. That's what they know.
Mr. de Klerk. A response from Mr. de Klerk.
May I, at the outset, say that our deficit before borrowing is much too high. If we want to be in step and attract foreign investment and be sure of the support of the IMF and the World Bank, we will have to continue in South Africa to maintain strict fiscal and financial discipline. This is what the government has been doing. By doing it, and by taking other steps, we've brought down the inflation rate to single-digit figures, and soon it might be 7%. We've brought down interest rates. All our economic indicators are pointing in the right direction. I'm very glad to hear that in the government of national unity, I will have the support of Mr. Mandela in being frugal with regard to government expenses. But then we must be frugal across the board, because it is at the moment organizations allied to the ANC who are once again doing damage to the South African economy by strikes with regard to various disciplines. And through those strikes, they are firstly helping to create an atmosphere which is not conducive to free and fair elections. Secondly, they're harming the economic interests of the country. So I'm glad to hear that he's committed to fiscal and financial discipline. He won't have any difficulty with me in achieving that. But if he thinks that he can save on the salary of politicians enough to solve the economic challenges which we have in South Africa, then he's in for a big surprise.
Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Mandela. You can have a rebuttal.
Obviously, Mr. de Klerk was not listening when I was speaking. I may well have heard that I'm happy he is going to cooperate with me if I say a state president should pay a tax on his income, on his resources, on his packs. That is what heads of state do throughout the Western world, not in South Africa. We are also going to issue government bonds, reconstruction bonds, both in South Africa and abroad, to raise the funds that we need. We are going to impose a fair tax to be paid by everybody. All these are going to help to get revenue for the country. But we are not going to live like fat cats. The days of the gravy trains are gone. Everybody should know that.
The ANC has promised lower taxes for everybody in its manifesto. Bonds, which you raise, also carry interest with them. And one of the biggest problems of South Africa is that the fastest growing item in our budget has been the interest on loans. Every loan that you take out needs to be repaid. And who repays it? The taxpayer. And therefore, we need across the board to ensure that we maintain fiscal discipline. That is the economic solution for the future. I have been listening very carefully to what Mr. Mandela has said. And I'm very glad that we're going to have a government of national unity, because it is clear that our experience will be absolutely essential if we want to have good government in South Africa.
We now move on to the next question. John Simpson again of the BBC, foreign editor. Your question now to Mr. de Klerk.
Another frank one, if I may. In February 1990, you assured white voters that they would have a part to play in the future political development of the country. At the end of your negotiations with the ANC, Mr. Joe Slovo of the ANC, the South African Communist Party, came out and said, I think, the Nats caved in at the end. By 1999, perhaps earlier, you won't be part of the government of national unity. Is it possible, do you think, that whites in South Africa will then perform the same function that they do in, say, Kenya or Zimbabwe? That's to say, they earn the money, earn some of the money, but they don't have any part to play whatever in the political process of the country.
Mr. de Klerk?
The answer is a frank no. I'm white, but I'm no longer the leader of a white party. I don't represent white interests. I represent a value system. And my party has support across the board from all population groups, colors, creeds, and races in South Africa. If my party is not the biggest party in this election, it will definitely be so in the next election. And the whites within the National Party, and many other whites, also supporting other parties like the DP, don't look upon themselves as a little group of people who are going to sit in a corner, divorcing themselves of South Africa and its problems and its people. We're part of a South African nation. Color in the National Party's vocabulary has become unimportant. What is important is, what do you believe in? We believe in free enterprise. We believe in good family values. We believe in real peace. We believe in reconciliation. We believe in Christian norms and standards. And that is bringing together all the people across the old divisions, from all the population groups, into our party. And that is giving an impetus to our party, which assures that for those who believe in this value system, which has proven itself across the world, which is in step with the successful part of the world, will become the dominant political factor. The ANC is a conglomeration. It's going to rip apart because they don't have a clear philosophy. They live in the past.
Thank you. Your reply, Mr. Mandela. You have 2 minutes.
It is quite clear that we're dealing with somebody who either does not know what he's talking about. If he does know what he's talking about, he does not care. In the first place, it's a false statement to suggest that any one individual started the negotiation process in February. Everybody knows that negotiation is the result of the suffering of the masses of the people, supported by the international community. It is them who came out to the streets, called strikes, boycotts, who were shot and killed by the racist security police of the National Party, who threw us in jail, who turned our lives into nightmares. that those are the forces who have brought about these changes in this country. We have been dragging Mr. de Klerk and the National Party, screaming, not wanting to come forward with us on this process. There are various examples which we can quote, but we are happy, I am happy, that we are working together. I met him 3 times in prison. We agreed to work together, and that is what I'm committed to, in spite of all the differences that we have.
Mr. de Klerk, your rebuttal in 1 minute.
The National Party changed its policy to its present policy 3.5 years before Mr. Mandela was released from jail in 1986. Secondly, Mr. Mandela can't bluff with these accusations. The family of the victims of the necklace murders which we had from supporters of his organization, the people in the townships who are suppressed and intimidated by the SDUs, they know who are suppressing them. The people whose houses have been burned down know who are the guilty ones, and the parents of the children whose lives have been ruined by the misuse of education by the ANC knows who caused the misery for their children.
Mr. Mandela.
This election is about securing a better life for our people. That is what the African National Congress is concentrating upon. Mr. de Klerk is alarmed because he is a leader of a party which even today is maintaining apartheid. He is spending 3 times on education on a white child than it does on a black child. What is the reason? What is the reason if apartheid has died? He has not built houses for Africans for more than 10 years. What is the reason for that discrimination? I cannot vote. There are 5 million people unemployed.
Mr. Mandela, with respect to your need to finish, we must unfortunately leave it there. And may I point out to our audience, to the extent, of course, that you are clapping and egging your leaders on, that you are also taking their time. And may I please ask our political correspondent, Lester Fenton, now to put his question to Mr. Mandela.
Thank you, Mr. Mandela. The Inkatha Freedom Party's decision to stay out of the election, the Zulu King's claim for an independent kingdom, and the associated tensions and the violence that arise from this situation seem to be problems that will not go away soon. In fact, this country could end up with a secessionist struggle waged from KwaZulu. If, when you are in power, how do you plan to deal with this matter?
I have maintained constant dialogue with the Inkatha Freedom Party, as well as His Majesty, the Zulu King. I attach a great deal of importance to peaceful solutions of problems. And I think that it has now been demonstrated that that is a very powerful weapon. I am going to continue to talk to the Inkatha Freedom Party, to the Zulu monarch. But the situation that is taking place now in KwaZulu-Natal, where there is no free political activity in many areas in that country, where people are dying by scores, has compelled us to link the political initiative and the security measures together. We regret that because we would like to emphasize, to concentrate on the peaceful initiative. We are doing that now. We will do that after the 27th of April. We will have formidable resources of being able to ensure that we reinforce our political initiatives as a government which exercises state power. I hope we'll succeed.
Mr. de Klerk, you have 2 minutes to reply.
On this issue, there has lately been very good cooperation between the government, the National Party government, and the ANC, and specifically between the two of us. I welcome that. I was critical earlier on. I felt that the ANC did not do enough with regard to Inkatha, but that is in the past. We have met in the Kruger National Park. It was an important meeting. We have made certain proposals. The ANC came forward also with constructive proposals. Inkatha and the Zulu King also came with specific proposals, and if you analyze the proposals from all three sides, there is already really a clear framework for consensus and for agreement. We then agreed with regard to the monarchy to form a working group. That working group has reported back to its principals, and I think it's a good report. I can live with it. I have some criticism, but basically I can live with it, and I would like to thank all those who made an input. So I think the problem of the Zulu monarchy can, within the framework of the transitional constitution and the principles, be really accommodated in a very dignified way, and we need not be worried that that problem cannot be solved. Inkatha is, in the words of Chief Minister Buthelezi himself, not a Zulu party. My analysis is that Inkatha has made major mistakes by not participating. I've bent over backwards from time to time making new suggestions how to bring them aboard. Together with the multi-party forum, we have called Parliament together, changed the Constitution, and brought in 5-6 fundamental changes which really accommodated their most potent objections to the first version of December.
I'm obliged to stop you there, Mr. de Klerk. Mr. Mandela, the last few words on this matter.
We must also always assess the statements made by Mr. de Klerk about the Inkatha Freedom Party, that this is his former ally. They use funds, state funds, in order to finance the murderous activities of the Inkatha Freedom Party. Mr. de Klerk admitted in July 1991 that they had given 8 million rand of our tax, of our money, to Inkatha. He admitted that. He had earlier admitted that they had given 250,000 rand to Inkatha. Always assess his statement in regard to Inkatha against that background.
Mr. de Klerk.
I find the sudden aggression of Mr. Mandela on this issue strange. It is the one thing that we have been cooperating well on. Can I just say that Mr. Mandela is referring to historical situations? I have stopped all the covert actions, and the Khan Committee under Professor Khan has monitored it and has assured me now that he is happy with the way in which all the covert activities which took place without my knowledge have been properly put under the table, and it's finished. Can I just say that as far as Inkatha is concerned, we are near to each other because they also believe in free enterprise, because they also believe in federalism. It is a policy bond, yes, which exists between us, but this government does not fund murderous activities.
Time is up on this issue. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I invite again now Ferry Al-Hafaji of SABC Radio to put the question to Mr. de Klerk.
Thank you, Freek. Mr. de Klerk, many people believe that your government is not being accountable. There have been 3 years of third force allegations. Nobody's taken the rap for it, although you may have appointed a number of commissions. Many billions of rands have been lost to corruption. Again, nobody's taken the rap for it. How do we ensure accountability in the future, especially under a government of national unity, where there's no opposition watchdog?
The National Party government has already put into place the instruments to ensure that accountability. We have strengthened the position of the Auditor General. We have made him more independent. We have appointed an ombudsman, and we have given that ombudsman more powers. Apart from all the commissions that we've instituted, we've built into the financial and administrative control system absolute improved systems to ensure that this is properly dealt with. But most of the corruption that you refer to took place in some of the homelands. And if you analyze the reports, you will find that the emphasis was, for instance, on Leboa and on Kwandebele. Those two homelands were run by Chief Minister Ramodike and Chief Minister Mahlangu. They are now on the ANC's candidate list. Well knowing that that corruption took place under their administration. I am against corruption, and I have a proud record. This government has a proud record of absolutely, fearlessly following up every allegation of corruption. And whenever anyone was found to be guilty, firm steps were taken. Accountability of the government comes into being when there was negligence or where there is knowledge. And in none of these instances has any government member been accused of negligence or of having had knowledge of the corruption which was uncovered.
Mr. Mandela, your response.
There is no transparency or accountability insofar as the National Party government. When we held a commission of inquiry into allegations of violation of human rights, we published our report. We took South Africa into confidence. He appointed a commission, General Piri Stay, to investigate the activities of the MI. He did dismiss certain officers. I then asked him to give me that report, because I said to him, that report has got a confirmation of the existence of the third force. I have not got that report from him even now. I am the leader of the most important political voice in this country. I started negotiations when I was in jail. I discussed it with Kobi Kutie, quite apart from the contribution of the masses of the people. But he has not given me that report. The reason? Because it has got a concrete evidence of the existence of the third force. That is the reason why there is no transparency in the statement which Mr. de Klerk is making is less than candid. That is the reality.
Opportunity for a rebuttal. Mr. de Klerk, you have 1 minute.
Minister Coetzee and I have explained, I think now 3 times, the situation with regard to the so-called Steyn report, and I'm really not going to do it. I only have a minute. It wasn't a report of that nature, but I took steps. There was a transparency with regard to the Commission's report on the detention camps. But were they acted against by the ANC? No, they once again high up on the candidates list. The very people who have been implicated by that Commission are now maybe ministerial candidates in the government of national unity, having been implicated by that Commission. The ANC should take steps against their supporters who make themselves guilty of atrocities or of any unacceptable behavior. That is what we are doing constantly.
Opportunity for a final reply, Mr. Mandela.
He has completely evaded my question. I am saying, if that report was innocent, he would have published it. He would have given to me. I am his partner. We are trying to solve these problems together. We are trying to promote a mutual confidence so that we, the two of us, and other players, can persuade the government of national unity to build this mutual confidence, to proceed with the task of nation building. He has not given me that report. Why?
We must leave the issue there. And now for the final question from my colleague, also from Radio Metro, Tim Modise, and it goes to Mr. Mandela.
Thank you, Frick. Mr. Mandela, we've been listening to the promises of the ANC, the National Party, tonight. The ordinary man and woman in the street is watching this and is listening. They want to know, are they going to feel safe on the streets after the government of national unity has been elected? They want to know if they will be recipients or whether there will be delivery of social services given the strikes that have been taking place, especially in the homelands. They want to know if public violence and criminal violence is going to be eradicated completely in South Africa. Above that, they want to know if there will ever be racial reconciliation in this country.
The African National Congress is committed to national reconciliation and to nation building. There is no organization in this country which has issued a policy statement to compare with the Freedom Charter, which is the most devastating attack on all forms of racialism. We have come out with a clear program to ensure a better life, to build houses, to offer employment, to provide a free quality education. But you must remember that violence is not caused by those who carry a gun, by those who steal. It is also caused by poverty, illiteracy, hunger. All these are evils of apartheid. We are going to address these problems and restructure the police force so that it could be a community police.
Mr. de Klerk.
I and the National Party share the deep concern of all our people about the violence. And within the government of national unity, which will no longer have any legitimacy problem, I believe that we will be able to address it through, firstly, restructuring, improving the economy. If our policy is followed, then we will succeed with that. Unemployment is one of the problems of crime and violence. The so-called lost generation, the millions of young South Africans, mostly of them black, who are not properly trained, who left school early, they need to be looked at. And at an earlier occasion, Mr. Mandela and I have already talked about it, that in the government of national unity we will have to address this problem in an imaginative way. Yes, I believe that through economic growth, through improvement of social conditions, which can then be afforded because there is economic growth, we can improve the quality of life of our people. We have already started to improve the relationships between the police and the community. And I'm fully in favor of community policing, and the new constitution makes provision for that. I hope that the election will also bring to an end the demonization of our police force. We only have one police force in South Africa. 1/3 of them are at the moment almost full-time busy in preventing or fighting or managing political unrest and political violence. Hopefully, when the election is over, those policemen and women will also be able once again to concentrate on crime prevention and on accosting criminals and on bringing them to book. I really believe that the election will bring us to the end of this violent period.
I must stop you there. Mr. de Klerk, we are doing very well on time. You are very disciplined, both of you. I will give you 1.5 minutes each now to respond. Mr. Mandela.
The exchanges between Mr. de Klerk and I should not obscure one important fact about our country. I think we are a shining example to the entire world of people drawn from different racial groups who have a common loyalty, a common love to their common country. That is the dominating issue. We are going to fight these issues out. But we have men and women in this country who have a reason, who are honoring the ideals of liberty and democracy in this country. And in spite of my criticism of Mr. de Klerk, sir, you are one of those I rely upon that we are going to face the problems of this country together and with other stakeholders.
Thank you for those kind words, Mr. Mandela. I can also testify that on major issues such as nation building, we are finding it possible to work together. Can I say that we won't have peace before we have real reconciliation? This election is about the future. It is not about the past. And until we bury the bitterness of the past, until one can never forget injustice, but you can forgive. And we need forgiveness. We need reconciliation. We need to put our hands in each other's hands, and all the population groups need to say, we need each other. We have a common destiny. Let us work together. And that is why I'm so satisfied that we have agreed upon a government of national unity, because that is the instrument we need to lead this country towards that nationhood which will make us all proud South Africans and which will ensure that we as a country will move forward together.
So that conversation taking place exactly 25 years ago at the Civic Centre in Johannesburg. Lots of issues being thrown up there, and of course we will unpack them with the facilitator that you're seeing there, Freek Robinson, and we'll be speaking to two political analysts as well, Professor Susan Boysens and Dr. Somadoda Figeni. The question we're asking you though is just how far has South Africa's democracy evolved since 1994? Please send us your comments using hashtag SABC 1994 debate, hashtag SABC 1994 debate, and we're just going to play back to you the final part of that conversation where they give the closing argument, so please don't go away.
It's not about xenophobia.
There are many issues of service delivery, housing, illegal mushrooming of structures.
They are now starting to move to Sandton and to submit a memorandum.
You're not going with tires there. That's all. I will stop this march here.
When we were burning tires in the inner Alexandra, they kept quiet because now we are going where they report. That is why they are having a problem.
We feel really undermined and disrespected that he did not show up to listen to our grievances. He has grown a tendency of only serving the so-called white monopoly capital and has forgotten about black communities. Development must happen either or of all sides because we are equally Batu.
But the people here today are saying service delivery to us, we deserve it.
Welcome back. You're watching SA Today, and the question we're asking you while we're replaying that all-important discussion just before the historic 1994 elections here in South Africa. It's just how far South Africa's democracy evolved since 1994. So send us your comments using hashtag SABC1994 debate. And remember, if you missed any part of this debate, you can watch it again on SABC News YouTube channel. So let's just get now to the tail end of that discussion, where former President F.W. de Klerk and Nelson Mandela are giving their closing arguments.
Come to the end of the question and answer session. I will now ask each of you to have a final closing statement. We have some time. I will give you 4 minutes. Mr. de Klerk, as agreed, you will go first.
Having come to the end of this debate, I would like to appeal to all the voters out there, firstly, who have not decided as yet for whom to vote, to seriously consider their position. We need a balance of power. There is only one party which can form that balance of power against the ANC, which is a strong party with wide support. They're the favorites, and that is the National Party. It is a new National Party, notwithstanding what has been said. It is a party which has renewed itself from within. It was an internal process. We've cleansed ourselves from within. We have admitted that our past policies led to injustice. We've apologized for that, and we say we have a job to do. We also want to rectify those injustices. This new National Party is a growing party. This new National Party is fighting to become the biggest party, not for jobs for ourselves, but because we believe in the values for which we stand. We believe in sound family values. We believe that parents should still be parents, and that children shouldn't deal with parents and grown-ups, as is happening in our country at the moment. We believe in Christian norms and standards. We believe in free enterprise. We believe in universal human rights and feel that the Bill of Rights need to be strengthened. We believe in religious freedom, and we care about the needs of our people. We know many people are suffering. We must accept the challenge to fight hunger, to fight poverty, to ensure that more and more jobs will be created, to build homes for the homeless, to improve the quality of education, to bring primary health care nearer to the people. We have accepted it as a party, and we will work together with all those who also stand for that. And on peace, we are committed to peace. Our hands are clean. The National Party, none of the National Party supporters are involved in violence. We're a peaceful party, and everybody who knows our party can testify as to that. And if one of our party members get out of line, we discipline them. The National Party believes in the future of this country and all its people. We see our country on the threshold of a new, wonderful, prosperous era. The whole of Africa wants us to succeed. The whole of Africa is reaching out towards a successful conclusion of the process in South Africa, because Africa needs us. The international community wants us to succeed, because they realize that South Africa has a pivotal role to play, not only in Africa, but also globally. The whole world is waiting for us to succeed, because what we have embarked upon in South Africa, all the leaders of all the parties together, has not succeeded in many countries elsewhere. There is a way, and that way is the real tolerance and the real commitment to peace and the adherence to workable policies which have succeeded elsewhere. That is the way, and that is the way of the new National Party, for which I ask the support of all the voters out there.
Thank you. Mr. Mandela, final closing statement from you.
Just before I deal with my statement, I would have liked to know from Mr. de Klerk, who was disciplined when 8 million of taxpayers' money was given to Inkatha Freedom Party. That was in July 1991. Who was disciplined? These vague statements are counterproductive because they lead to the conclusion that Mr. de Klerk is less than frank in making important statements on national issues. But I want to say that various points of view have been expressed here. I wanted to assure you that on the 27th of April, you will make your choice. And I don't doubt what it is going to be. The choice will be whether you wanted the same problems to continue within the next 5 years. Massive unemployment, limited opportunities, continued racial division, or whether you wanted the beginning of a new era of hope, of peace, of security, where the basic needs of everybody have been attended to. Here, we are saying the ANC has the most cogent plan to deal with this situation. The fact that Mr. de Klerk, when we asked for his comprehensive plan to deal with these basic needs, he can only tell us of some document he has given to the Housing Forum. There is no evidence at all of the circulation. I have never received it. He has never given to me. I have been with him very frequently. Where is their
final closing statement from you?
Just before I deal with my statement, I would have liked to know from Mr. de Klerk, who was disciplined when 8 million of taxpayers' money was given to Inkatha Freedom Party? That was in July 1991. Who was disciplined? These vague statements are counterproductive because they lead to the conclusion that Mr. de Klerk is less than frank in making important statements on national issues. But I want to say that various points of view have been expressed here. I wanted to assure you that on the 27th of April, you will make your choice. And I don't doubt what it is going to be. The choice will be whether you wanted the same problems to continue within the next 5 years. Massive unemployment, limited opportunities, continued racial division, or whether you wanted the beginning of a new era of hope, of peace, of security, where the basic needs of everybody have been attended to. Here, we are saying the ANC has the most cogent plan to deal with this situation. The fact that Mr. de Klerk, when we asked for his comprehensive plan to deal with these basic needs, he can only tell us of some document he has given to the Housing Forum. There is no evidence at all of the circulation. I have never received it. He has never given to me. I have been with him very frequently. Where is their plan? With whom was it discussed? But we are saying, let us work together.
Please.
Let us work together for reconciliation and nation building. I am proud to hold your hand for us to go forward together. Let us work together to end divisions and suspicion. I have traveled throughout this country, spoken to thousands of people. I know that they deserve a better life. They deserve a better future. And the only organization I'm calling upon you to vote for is the African National Congress. If you vote for the African National Congress, you are voting for an organization which has got an experience of more than 80 years in nation building. It's an organization which will never issue documents of this nature, which today in 1994 says, Busak, why are you not with your people? Why are you with Africans? It is the most divisive party in this country. If you want national unity, that is the organization I lead, the African National Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Mandela. We must leave it there. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. May I thank both of you for the spirit of this debate. And with that, we come to the end of this historic broadcast from the Johannesburg Civic Theatre Complex. We bid you good night.
Right, so that historic conversation taking place exactly 25 years ago, and as you saw, Friek Robinson, veteran journalist, was facilitating that conversation. Professor Susan Boyson, who's with the Mapungube Institute, is a research director there. Also with us in the studio, political analyst Dr. Somadoda Figeni, joining in on this conversation. So it feels, I think, for all of us, like we've just gone back in time. And Friek, I'm curious for you. They say hindsight is 2020. How do you feel about the conversations that were had then? What promises were made, and how you see the conversation now?
I'll come to that in a moment, but can I just say this? That broadcast that we've seen went out apparently to 800 million people in the world. It was syndicated to so many television stations worldwide. I was told that 30 seconds before we started, so you can imagine the pressure. But nevertheless, listening again to that debate, I think it's very distressing to think that all of those issues that we're hearing about 25 years ago, we're still here today. And that's sad.
And do you think it's because the landscape hasn't changed much, or is it because the challenges remain the same?
The challenges also and the leaders that we've had, you know, apart from the 9 lost years that Mr. Ramaphosa himself referred to.
Was Tito Mboweni, actually, yes.
But the unfortunate thing is that we haven't made the progress, not any of those parties, to the extent that they actually promised it or believed that it would be possible to do. So that's unfortunate.
Of those challenges, which stand out for you the most? Of those issues that kept on coming up time and time again, which of those stand out the most, as in to say we have not moved as a country?
Well, all the basic things are better, but not as it should be. Poverty, lack of jobs, the corruption that is shown. Also, there's no cohesion. I think the race relations are even worse than what it has been in 1994. So unfortunately, I'm a bit pessimistic after I've seen this afternoon. But I think we can make progress. But then we need some strong leadership from Mr. Ramaphosa. The unfortunate thing is showing out that basically we in South Africa has come to a dead end in our democracy, because we've reached a stage now where we cannot move beyond the problems that we have in the Constitution, and we must change those things in the Constitution. First of all, we all know that most people, or many people, say that they want to vote for Mr. Ramaphosa but not for the ANC. But you cannot do that, because unfortunately that's not possible in the Constitution as it's written now. So that must change, so that we can actually call the President himself to responsibilities and say, you must do what you promise, and if you don't do it, we vote you out. But we can't, because we cannot vote for him.
It's a very interesting point, Professor Susan Boyce, because I'm just wondering, just looking back at what some would call the Mandela legacy as South Africans today, do they see him, the man, the leader? Do they separate him from the party? And how important is that for us 25 years later to frame that particular discussion?
Yes, it is a historical moment that we've just revisited here. That was phenomenal. And given the tensions, the emergence out of warlike situations that we have had there, given the 46 years of an immoral, unethical apartheid government that South Africa had lived with, given the real tangible possibilities at that stage that South Africa would descend into violence, even before we got to the election, I think it is an immensely different situation that we are in today. In retrospect, we tend to forget how tense, how volatile, fragile the moment, the history that time was. Here was a party, the old so-called new National Party, and de Klerk was fascinating. It was fascinating watching him revisit the reinvented new, so-called new National Party then. And that moment, and that was a party after 46 years in government, handing over power, acknowledging that reconciliation is needed. It had been doing it, the old new National Party, for a few years by then, but this was an immensely different situation from what we have today. Yes, many of the problems are there, but they're here now, but they are in different manifestations.
Talk about that. Dr. Figeni, the then and the now, corruption came up a lot, and as Professor Boyson says that F.W. de Klerk had pains to reinvent the National Party and its legacy. And I want to talk about corruption and the reality of that government that came into power, that is the ANC government. How much could they have escaped the post-independence characters that African countries inherit? And I'm talking about the corrupt institutions, the laws, the values, the colonial and apartheid governments.
In fact, let me start by saying again, this was such a historic moment, not only for South Africa, for the whole world, because our struggle had been one of the most internationalized. Eduardo Galeano says, history never says goodbye, it simply says see you later. We are seeing quite a number of things. Just to speak to your question, the biggest problem South Africans experienced, both those from the liberation and those who were from the apartheid system, was this notion of South African exceptionalism. It won't happen to us, which made it impossible for the society to learn from other post-colonial states, to see how once you are in power, you either transform the system or you get assimilated to the system and begin to mimic some of the tendencies of the system. And that is what we've seen with corruption, that instead of transforming the system, individuals got into power, they saw the access to power, and they begin to do exactly what...
So let's zero in on the individuals who then become the leaders, because both F.W. de Klerk and Nelson Mandela referred to that. Former President Mandela saying that a leader who speaks just from the prism of his party is very problematic. F.W. de Klerk warning against absolute power corrupting, so to speak, about a one-party state. But can post-independence African countries or leaders change their political culture, that of being centrist, that of being strongly dominated not only by a leader, the political, ethical and regional factions as well?
Actually, we've seen a variety of examples that not all of them do go the same route, but a significant portion has repeated exactly that. Where a personalities become more important than the party, than the institutions. in a South African environment, in an ironic twist, we were looking at Mandela as this messianic leader. And we started being, expectant of a leader of that nature. And we started putting more faith in a leader instead of building the individual and the civic agency. Right now, I would say in South Africa, we have a very partisan environment where we do not have national interest, the common purpose. Each leader speaks for the party. They are speaking for 8th of May, and most of the time you do not have the historic and visionary impact that you might have seen with the post-independence, leaders, some of them having tried. Your Nyereres, your Kaundas, your many others, your Nkrumahs, initially before some had faltered.
Can I just add a story to what Sumadoda said here? That evening, after that debate, we invited the leaders to come to the SABC here on the 28th floor to just to celebrate the occasion and so on, to release some of the tension. I waited at the door for Mr. Mandela to arrive, and Mr. de Klerk indicated he would not come. But Mr. Mandela did, and he came. I met him at the door and I took him through to the lift. On the way towards the lift, there was an old lady at 10 o'clock at night already, standing there with a polisher, polishing the floor. And while we were talking, Mr. Mandela said, Mr. Robinson, just a moment. And he walked over to that lady and he said, lady, you are absolutely fantastic. It's wonderful to see people like you doing your work at 10 o'clock at night and do so diligently. Keep on going. We are proud of you. Now that indicated the persona of Mandela and what he did for reconciliation in this country. But unfortunately, I think beyond that, we haven't really put in structures, to build that reconciliation and to take it forward, even to this very day.
So, Freek, tell me, because one of the BBC journalists did ask Nelson Mandela that how would you feel with all of these big promises that you're making? Should they fail, and should you go the way of other African countries or your neighbors? How would you feel about that failure? Was it something that he could have been cognizant of, given the mammoth task that was ahead of him, completely turning around one of the most unequal societies in the world, and giving fair opportunity to all?
It's a very difficult situation. Of course, we are a unique country and we've always been with a unique history and very divisive. So you could not expect him alone to succeed, but we should have taken it further beyond Mandela. And unfortunately, we didn't do it. Mandela himself in 1997 asked the church leaders to come up with some kind of a solution for social cohesion in South Africa. That never really came to real fruition because the moral regeneration movement was started, and the chairperson of that movement was at the time Deputy President Jacob Zuma. So one wonders why that didn't succeed. But nevertheless, today as we speak here, we do not have an institution, something of a social cohesion arm of the Department of Arts and Culture that's dealing with, and Judge Mogoro, when she's not on a commission, is dealing with that. But there's no great effort into it to say, well, let's do this thing.
I want us to whittle down to the nitty-gritties in just a moment. But Professor Booysens, I'm just wondering, watching F.W. de Klerk there, dismissing and criticizing the ideological policies of the ANC in terms of how they intend to turn the country around, obviously speaking out against nationalism and all of that. But it was clear that the intention was creating some sort of, should I say, a better class for those who are marginalized by apartheid. Capitalist class, some would argue. Others just simply saying what we've seen as black economic empowerment, indigenous business owners, etc. But how much of that could have worked without us being at the point at which we are? Because there is, and it's being lamented, massive lack of infrastructural change?
Yes, we see the budget and sustainability of changes and fundability of different plans really taking central place in that debate. And so much of that could have been a part of a debate today. And the ideological stances here, in some ways it was a bit rich of FW de Klerk to come in here and say that cannot work if they had been so expertly avoiding justice, economic justice, and at least sowing the seeds of a different kind of system there. And indeed, there was some prophetical value in some things that F.W. de Klerk said there, but that actually, there's a total bottom foundation falls out of it if one considers the serious situation in which South Africa had been plunged through decades of misrule under the ANC. ANC definitely, I believe, could have done better in the 25 years subsequently, but there is indeed a deep structural malformation of society, structural misalignment that happened in those times, and was perpetuated into the present. Yes, the ANC in 25 years should have done more and should have been more concertedly applying themselves and should have assured, something even in Nelson Mandela's days before he exited power in 1999, it was very clear ANC was lamenting the fact that cadres were entering the ANC in order to make money, in order to position themselves for business opportunities. And those early days, the action against that was not strong enough. And that's why we also see the ANC, like in some of the countries that Somodora is mentioning here, trying to reinvent themselves. In many of these countries, they've gone through cycles of good governance and bad governance. And there almost always has been some visionary leader that was seen to be better than the party.
Could I just add to that to say, we must point some fingers with respect to Mr. de Klerk as well, because he emphasized so clearly in that debate how important it was that there's a government of national unity. But he himself then led the National Party out of that government, and I think that was a big mistake. Only earlier this week I spoke to a former cabinet minister of the National Party who lamented the fact that they left it. He said that was the point where all started going wrong. I don't know whether one should say, it to that extent, but at least that was a mistake for sure.
Mm-hmm. Could they have stayed longer than 1999, Dr. Fikeni? As one of the journalists asked, that would you be surprised if you find yourself out of this, and how instrumental would white people then be in the day-to-day policy decisions of governance? How would you reflect on the comment that Frederik just made and that question there? But I also want to come down to the bread and butter issues. We've seen visual disgruntlement in the form of protests. We've been told that it's reached a record number just within this first quarter, and it's all because we are going towards elections. So that agency that you are speaking of, is it because people feel that it is non-existent and the only way to grab government's attention or politicians' attentions is to go and protest violently?
I do think that the problems we face are much more deeper and profound. South Africa has never had an honest, difficult conversation about where it is or where it was. There was just a hope that things would work out. We then went on to build new institutions, the infrastructure of democracy, the constitution, the Chapter 9 institutions, the judiciary, and so forth. We went on to put in some infrastructure, social infrastructure. But one thing we have neglected, which has come back to bite us, is the human agency, the person. Whether you talk education, what kind of a person is this education going to prepare? Or you talk of a family. And the irony today, we have one of the world-acclaimed constitutions, except that we don't conform to it. We have some of the best governance systems. We've gone on to become corrupt because we've not focused on the person or individual psychology, the collective and individual psychology. And we have not even debated the issues that when you talk human rights, there are rights, but there are also responsibilities. Those with property tend to emphasize on first-generation political and civic rights, and those who have nothing tend to emphasize on the second-generation housing, socio-economic transformation. But the one point I want to say, though, what is amazing in that debate, which has continued, is how de Klerk and perhaps his cohort of leaders are unaware of the fact that they were presiding over the most corrupt system entirely.
Unaware or unwilling?
Yes, unwilling.
In fact, I want to come to the same point. Here is the most successful socialist government where government intervened on behalf of whites and succeeded in terms of fighting poor whiteism, in terms of education, in terms of nationalizing. Once they're in that position, then he's arguing that let's have less government, let's have the private sector to command these things, we shouldn't even be involved. That kind of not understanding the very same tools which they had used, that you needed something fundamental, something not normal, not conventional. He was thinking about all other normal countries, but at that particular moment you needed a major intervention to change the apartheid geography. Unfortunately, that never happened, and we are where we are precisely because people look and realize that not much has changed in terms of the fundamental socio-economic issues.
One of the problems there is, of course, is that the president has the power in terms of the constitution to appoint so many people, and that's why we have all these commissions about state capture and so on. So that's a fundamental problem that we'll have to address.
Can I also just add here, we have to see this debate in a very specific historical context. This was just before that 1994 election. These were, in essence, election campaigns and speeches that were hoping to help consolidate that very uncertain situation at the time, and simultaneously trying to sway large proportions of yet undecided voters. And that is, we see them touching base on all the issues that both of them had access to very good polling research at that time. They knew roughly what the outcome of the election was going to be. They knew exactly what the issues were and what the voters were thinking of particular issues. And so we see them touching these one by one by one. Hope, plan, jobs, yes, controlling the police.
Professor Booysen, is that part of the problem, that we're still repeating those conversations today? If you look at the first post-apartheid census, it recorded about 1.5 million households in informal settlements. To date, or in 2011, that figure was almost 2 million. To date, 2017, that was 5.4 million South Africans who are living in informal settlements. So for the electorate, I'd imagine they'd say, who is going to make my lot better? And who is holding these politicians to account for all of those promises that were made is a more important question, because are there people who are not benefiting the ones who are not holding them to account?
Exactly, and that is also in that context that we see so much extra protest. And the point that formal democracy, so many of our formal democratic institutions, those endorsed in the Constitution, are just not working as the way they should be. And that is why people are going to the streets, supplementary, adjunct forms of democracy to protest, to make sure that those politicians actually hear their voices. And
structurally, how can you address that? What do you suggest?
Structurally, it is a long-term process that could possibly bring politicians to be better accountable. But then it has so much become part of South African political culture. We do adjunct democracy, and we have human rights, third-generation human rights, but we don't take them as seriously as we should be because the Constitutional Court has inserted the as far as affordable into it.
Actually, I think the biggest problem that South Africans find themselves in is honesty and courage deficit. Where on earth have you seen a country with two capitals? half the time you can't find a person this side because they are flying that side and so forth. Reason? No, there are sensitivities instead of being bold. Throughout the world, we know that small businesses are the ones that absorb the most people in terms of employment. Guess what? In South Africa, each sector is dominated by 2 or 3 players. Whether it's the mobile telephones, it's the mining, it's energy supply and so forth. It's counterintuitive, but because we're still frozen in that mold of saying, can we just try to accommodate each other? In fact, we even compromise if there's poverty. We say, let's compromise with poverty because poverty will feel hurt if we go all the way out. These problems need a decisive leadership. And it needs an honest conversation where we will say we may go through some challenges, some difficulties, but at a certain point, there is a common purpose, there is unity, there is prosperity. But right now, we aren't addressing the fundamental issues that we ought to be addressing.
What is failing us? Former President Mandela making a very profound point there by saying, you know, violence is not only through the barrel of the gun, it is through poverty, it is through illiteracy, it is through unemployment. Unemployment in 1994 was at 20.3%. And in 2018, that figure stood at 27.5%. But there's also been an exponential population growth. So how do we weigh up whether or not a bad situation is continuing or it's being made worse by external factors beyond the policy interventions that are on the table, the political will? Freek, your thoughts?
I wonder, given the fractures in society and in political parties, whether we will have that kind of leadership that the professor spoke about that we should have in this country. I think all the parties find themselves in very difficult positions at the moment because there isn't one person that's cohesively speaking from one mouth and really doing so very well. With great respect to our president, he is certainly bringing hope and people are expecting more of him. But to what extent is he going to be in a position to really do something as the leader of the ANC?
To me, just going back to the issue of housing and other things that were escalating, just to show you some of the counterintuitive approach and policies. We've had a city and urban centric policy programs. People come to the city because for a long time you could only get housing in the city. People come from within the rural areas in South Africa because the opportunities are concentrated in the cities. People come from outside the country because there is this hope that you have the opportunities there. And they meet in informal spaces in the struggle for resources. And that in itself is also one of the things that will make the issue of housing a running target. Because if you say I'm going to provide housing for how many people, and when are you expecting those numbers and so forth, that's why you keep having a running target. But we're not having a decent, honest diagnosis of these problems and
what
the
should be
solution
done
to
then?
them.
Must there be some kind of different way of approaching it?
Yes, a decentralization where you begin to say you are developing literally some of the services, some of the programs in the rural areas rather than everybody. If Gauteng has doubled the population in a space of 10 years, imagine for a policymaker who has to be adjusting budget by 6%, how are you going to meet those targets if it keeps doubling? Those are some of the conversations. When Chinese developed the coastal regions, they said, everybody now is pulling this way. Let's put some of the nodal areas. And they put resources into those. So to me, it's bold steps that should be taken.
How bold do you get? Because both leaders were promising a new era, and we know, as Friek was saying, that there was optimism about the entry into the helm of President Ramaphosa. So you obviously are wooing the electorate with the promise of a real dream or dream coming true. But when you talk about free education, free higher education, how realistic are you if you're saying, yes, we have increased NSFAS budget by 70 billion rand, but ignoring the per capita GDP increases at institutions of higher learning, ignoring the fact that there are other challenges? We're speaking about the fact that there is generational poverty. We're speaking about the fact that there is bad transport infrastructure. There's not enough accommodation for students. I'm just saying that there seem to be so many systemic promises. So when you say you're offering the electorate this promise, just how far do you go when you say you're being bold?
Yes, you know, at this stage in South Africa today, part of that boldness is showing you have control and you can steer the state and control state budgets and direct funnel those budgets into the specific developmental areas. And it takes today exactly that courage that Mandela was referring to, alluding to, that the budget has to be reorganized, take away from this, take away from that. And it is bold leadership there. And then
but it also means aggressive reform, Professor
It does.
And I'm saying that in that conversation, there was concern that you might have capital flight, or you won't be able to draw in FDI if you come with these bold or aggressive reform policies.
Now, a strong leader must be able to point out, and that is imminent, that is so clear, that instability will follow unless you get some radical forms of radical transformation in some parts of the economy, education, health, but do it in economically sustainable ways. And a bold leader has to be able and can show that investment is not just possible in an easy, conventional, so-called investor-friendly ways, but you need to build that internal stability, and it's through services, through funneling the national debate into the right location.
Dr. Can untransformed countries or nations be developed nations? Simply put.
Not really, because you want to have an inclusive, economic input from all the sectors of the society. It will always be the small elite, having assimilated the latter-day converts from the liberation ranks as well, hence the inequality. You can't do that if you also have a corrupt system, a patrimonial system, because it feeds into the system. What ought to happen here? Investors will come if there is policy certainty, even if you had difficult policies. Look at Botswana and many other countries where investors are flowing. The country has a share in mining, it has a share in different things, but because the company can calculate and say this is what we're going to see. What have we seen in South Africa? Every 3-4 years policies change. That policy uncertainty is worse than a radical, profound policy when you are certain. The other thing in reorganizing, which Susan was talking about, is our system efficient? Why South Africa in basic education is said to be one of the top 15 per capita expenditure on that, and yet our results are some of the worst in the world? It means we are sending money not to where it's supposed to be sent.
All right,
we can talk about systems as well. You've mentioned that. Why are all these SOEs so powerful and they control budgets of billions and there's no control over that? There must be some kind of a system. Because our constitution was written for Mandela. It wasn't written for some of the others who followed him. So as a result of that, we presume that the president would be wonderful and clever and intelligent and honest. But it's not written somewhere in the system.
To me, that's where I say it's not just the institutions alone. As I said earlier, we have some of the best institutions. If you take governance policies which have been recommended everywhere else in the world, but the character, the attributes of people who occupy those positions. If you take a thief to run even a monastery, that thief will steal the wine and everything from the monastery.
I want us to talk about social cohesion as well. I want to read some tweets that are coming in though from our viewers. I've got Simpiwe Volindlulu saying that after all is said and done, the promises of pre-hashtag pre-1994 elections have not changed much. Unemployment, education, and many more are still rife. We engineered slogans to counter the energy we had. And let's see the next one from Future Billionaire saying, amazing how in 2019 we're still grappling with the very same issues: safety, crime, unemployment, poverty, racism, 25 years later. The next one is from Zibuse Kunene saying, if so many things haven't changed in the last 25 years, is there hope for change at all? And this other one from Nkululeko Khulusa saying, today's politicians should be watching this and being ashamed. The value of the rand since then, the state being captured, social imbalance. Since then, the land and the wealth still being held by those who stole it. And I believe we do have a final one from Belladonna saying, delusion is rife within society. We thought freedom will bring a better life instead. Most cost of living is skyrocketing, crime is rife, unemployment, service delivery protests everywhere. I could go on and on and on. So I want to talk about
the same kind of thing that's said by all of them, unfortunately.
That there's no change. And I want to ask, has there been change in terms of social cohesion? Nelson Mandela accusing the National Party and FW de Klerk by being divisive in their electioneering, especially zeroing in on the colored community. And FW de Klerk, of course, denying that, saying it's the ANC that's been exclusive of development with the colored community. We were recently in Cape Town hosting an election debate there, and what did come out is there is some disaffection from the colored community because they feel that they have been left out of the gains of democracy. Frick, your thoughts on this, and I'll hear from both Professor and Doctor.
Well, this is my passion. I think that we as South Africans must get together. We cannot allow the future to overtake us. You know, we must create that future. We ourselves are citizens of this country, and we have such fantastic people. And here we're sitting, and all these people, I know them, and we've dealt with each other, and it's so nice to interact at work, and where there's an open and free and, you know, human kind of atmosphere. There are wonderful things in this country, but we do not put it into working for the future of this country.
You said earlier that you feel that where we are in terms of social cohesion is far worse than where we began. Why did you think that?
Well, I wouldn't say it's far worse, but it's certainly, I don't think it has improved to the extent that we should have improved, because we do not have a plan on the table. We do not have a real program to drive the process. Because if we are our enemies, and we've been enemies for centuries, we cannot be friends overnight just like that. There's a process, there's a psychological process, there's a working progress that must be, you know, installed in the society, and that unfortunately is not happening to the degree that we should. We cannot think this problem is just going to resolve itself. It's not going to resolve itself.
Dr. Fikeni?
Actually, for me, I think lest the tone suggests that nothing has happened. There was a season of hope, and there is progress that was made. And then there was a season of despair when regression came. As a political scientist, that cycle was expected. You do have euphoria at a certain point. You do have the initial takeoff. But things go wrong at a certain point. And that we should acknowledge. In terms of social cohesion, we must understand both the local and the global context. We live in an era of populism. We live in an era of fragmentation, not only in South Africa, right across the world. The anti-establishment. You see Trump in the US and what is happening across Europe. You see the issues of immigration and the identity politics. So we must understand that global context as well. And the second part, it is the fact that once you do not talk sincerely about what trade-offs you're dealing with, we can be hugging each other during the World Cup. If somebody is going back to the informal settlements, where their daily life is to survive, it's the diseased life and so forth, it doesn't matter what debate, what common flag you have, until you deal with those fundamental issues. One leaves after you have hugged in Sandton to join the, the metro rail. Other one goes to the Gautrain. Other one takes Uber. Their lived experiences.
So that's exactly the point, isn't it, Professor Booysen? If you look at youth unemployment in 1996, that's between the ages of 15 to 35, that was at 40%. That's the narrow definition. In 2018, it was 52.8%. But the truth of the matter is that the global youth unemployment rate is actually 3 times higher than that of adult unemployment. So meaning that this is something that's taking place across the world. So we are also dealing with challenges as being a newly part of the global community, and we're talking about 25 years on. So how much do South Africans acknowledge the perception of how good or how bad their life is 25 years later and their lived experience, as Dr. Fikeni here says?
Yes, people live, vast numbers, disproportionate numbers of youth live in poverty. And that is going to affect not just their quality of life and their discontent and alienation from mainstream political society and from parties and elections, but it's going to affect social cohesion. Unless the economic basis of society comes right, improves, and for young people to give a mistake and you hope that this system will actually do something for their future, they are going to move away, and they are going to see, whether they're in a so-called colored community or black, the differences, discrepancies, and that is not good for reconciliation.
And
does it mean that it's impossible to do something about social cohesion if there's no equality?
Not impossible, but it will go much better if there is much better equality.
Unfortunately, it's so much to talk about in so little time, but thank you so much to all of you. Freek Robinson, veteran journalist who was facilitating that historic debate that we played earlier on. Professor Susan Booysen, who's Director of Research at Mapungubwe Institute, and thanks as well to political analyst Dr. Somadoda Fikeni. And remember that you can watch the debate if you missed it. That's on SABC News channel on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much to my guests, and thanks to all of you at home who are participating through your social media interaction. We're taking a quick break. We'll be back.
Get the facts first.